Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural, brought to you by Destiny Designers TV Network and myself, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, our two co-hosts, Edward Pichardo, Esquire, Royce Russell, Esquire. We appreciate you tuning in. For those of you who are with us every single week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we thank you for joining us, being a part of the show, sharing with us the information that you receive that's beneficial, and also updating you on what's happening. Hey, Richard. Yes, time to learn, time to have a great fellowship. Thank you for sharing the broadcast as well with those who you feel would be interested in really understanding what's going on in our community where the legal meets the cultural. So we have a lot to talk about today. We will go through a couple of different topics, but before we get into the business of the day, let me let my co-host greet you. So, ¿cómo está?
Muy bien, muy bien. Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I think you're going to find our show fulfilling and informational as usual. We're going to be talking about some selective justice or application of the law. We're going to talk about the importance of local politics. We're going to talk about some hypocrisy too, and some timing. Quite frankly, and we also going to talk about the threat that these individuals who are looking to usurp our government are presenting to some of our local officials. In fact, so I think you're going to like this show.
Sounds like a typical show to me, Ed.
Yeah, right.
All to talk about. So, all right, welcome everybody. This is Royce Russell, R Square. ESQP LLC. So let's get cranking because the information is burning. So let's get it on out, Dr. Grant.
Yeah, it seems as if we have some interesting justice, or is it justice, that's happening right here in our backyard. For those of you who are in the New York City area, you're familiar with where Staten Island is located. And we have information about this bar owner who floated COVID restrictions and indicted for illegal liquor sales, escapes assault charges for hitting, let me repeat that, hitting a deputy with his Jeep. Caller, what say you? I mean, this is quite interesting.
Well, when I saw this story, I said, "Oh my gosh!" And I read what DA, District Attorney of Staten Island, Richmond County, Michael McMahon, claiming that there just simply wasn't enough evidence to indict this man on assaulting a law enforcement officer. And then I thought about Run DMC, and that part where he says, he talks about, you need some glasses like DMC. I think DA Michael McMahon needs some new glasses, some very strong glasses, because in this case, you clearly had a video showing what this man did to this law enforcement officer. So there's something either wrong with the cameras. Maybe we got to donate some video equipment to the district attorney's office and the courthouse in Richmond County. Something has to be done. I mean, how do you get from not being able to indict? And all they are charging him with at this point is the unlicensed sale of alcohol and the unlicensed, having an unlicensed bottle club, which I believe means that he was selling bottles of alcohol, in violation of the alcohol and beverages, ABC, alcohol and beverages control law, state law. And all this man is going to be subject to is a misdemeanor. I read a subsequent article where they talked about how his attorney talked about how the prosecution, or originally the criminal complaint, exaggerated the officer's injuries, claiming that there was no fracture, to the sheriff, the deputy sheriff's leg, and the sheriff's the sheriff's department is countering, saying that there must have been a misdiagnosis. And that, to me, is reminiscent of when the EMS showed up for the Eric Garner incident and decided not to render aid in time to save his life. So, man, that's an alternative universe out there. And the only place that I usually read about alternative universes is in the comic books or in Star Wars or Star Trek. So I don't know what to do with it.
I can tell you, Ed, you are reading a comic book because it is comedic in the worst way. There's something to be said about the smell test and the eye test. And right now we're in the midst of playoffs in football. We're in the midst of starting the basketball season. We're in the midst of guys being recruited in the next couple of months to sign NFL contracts, being recruited to play college football, being recruited to play in the NBA. And one of the things that's always misleading is stats and numbers and what you read on paper. And you often hear recruits say, "What does the eye test tell me? What am I seeing? Am I reading a guy has 4.3 speed, but I'm watching him run and he looks slow as hell? Am I reading that a guy has 5.3 speed and I'm watching him and he looks fast as hell? Are my eyes playing tricks on me?" You know what I mean? That was a record, right? The eyes playing trick on me. That was one of those rap records, right?
All right. We'll put a pause in your rap career.
And so, I say this to say that when we saw the video, we saw an officer on top of a hood of a car. We saw an officer being run over. We saw an officer being discarded to the side. Now, my prosecutorial mind could be dusted off a little bit. It is not that old. Tells me at the very least that's a misdemeanor. That's attempted misdemeanor. That's a B misdemeanor. That's an A misdemeanor. That's an attempt on a law officer or a peace officer that is causing injury. That raises to a level of a felony where you will have a criminal history and at best maybe probation at the end of the day if you have been a law-abiding citizen. But once again, we speak to local politics, right? Those in power do what they want to do when they have the power. We know that the district attorney in Staten Island is not a friend of ours, friend of people of color. He might have friends that are people of color, but his policies is not one, and his implementation clearly missed the mark. I would say it again, clearly missed the mark. This man walking away with ABC violations, which are usually taken care of in civil court, not in criminal court. There is no charges in reference to causing harm to a police officer. And here's the biggest hypocrisy and the void and the hole that I see in this whole thing is, where's Pat Lynch? Why isn't he on the microphone? The Police Benevolent Association president. Why isn't he screaming outcry? Why isn't he screaming, hey, look, this is how you treat our officers. This is why it's dangerous for them to be out there on the street. He never misses an opportunity to get on the microphone. He was on the microphone praising and promoting our former President Trump when he ran for re-election.
Well,
now it's silence night. I know it's Christmas time, but how long are we going to sing that song?
And if I may, just for the viewers, the New York City Sheriff's Association is the union, the labor union that represents the sheriffs. Pat Lynch is the president of the New York City Police Patrolmen's Benevolent Association. Why do I mention that? Because I read another article about this, and I said, I wanted to find out, well, what did the president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association have to say about this? And from what I recall, the statement that she gave was very muted in terms of, oh, we're disappointed that there weren't charges. It almost seemed as if, whatever was happening at the time that she was speaking, Pat Lynch must have been standing over her, like, you better watch what you say. Right. Don't stand up for your members. Remember, we got more numbers than you.
That's
kind
right.
of thing. Like how, like just blow my mind. This is one of your members that got injured by this man, and that's all you have to say. And of course, yeah, where is Pat Lynch? I mean, he always has something to say when it comes to last night, this officer got shot up in the Bronx. I believe he stopped the car. The guy in the car had a gun, automatically started, banging out, and, shots were fired. And his statement was, the reason kind of this is happening is because we're concentrating on diversion programs instead of, just going after the bad guys. It's really simple. You got the good guys and you got the bad guys. Well, what I would ask is, okay, if you only got the good guys and the bad guys, who's Danny Presti then?
Right.
Where's this guy right here?
What is he fall on?
Is he one of the good guys that you staying silent and not saying anything, or is he one of the bad guys?
Once again, Ed, it's Silent Night. It's Christmas time. That's what we singing, because he is on the bad guy side. I mean, if the ledger is a positive and a negative, then he would have to be a negative, right? If he tried to run somebody over. Right?
Now, brothers and sisters, I want you to pay attention to this incident, because what's happening here basically is that the district attorney in Richmond County, who's an elected official, has decided, it's almost clear, he has decided that he's going to stand with his constituency, and he's not going to do anything to upset them.
And let me just say one thing, so you folks out there can, maybe it might come in a little differently. When we say Richmond County, we talking about Staten Island. All right,
exactly.
Staten Island, Wu-Tang, the whole nine, Staten Island.
Exactly. Shaolin.
How much you think we talking about Richmond, Virginia? This is happening right here, right before us.
So this elected official decided, you know what? I'm not going to do anything to upset my constituency, the people who elected me, because it's well known that the conservative citizens, residents of Staten Island, Richmond County, elected this DA to enforce the law a certain way. Okay? And they've been against these COVID restrictions, anti-mayor. They've held rallies in front of
even the election for the Senate seat, right? Remember that broke down to whether or not you support police or didn't support police, right?
That's the congressional seat over there. Yeah, Malliotakis and the other gentleman.
That's right. The whole thing was, did you support police? Were you marching to defund? Where were you? So now you're saying, hey, we want a pro-police person in Congress, but yet when it comes
that selectively enforces the law.
Right. There you go. right. There you go. Right there. Twice, right? Selective enforcement.
And mind you, the I don't know this, but hey, listen, it piques my interest. The deputy sheriff who was injured, his last name is Matos. Matos is a Latino surname. In fact, I got a very good friend who happens to be Dominican and happens to be a law enforcement officer too, not locally, out of state, with the same last name. I'm wondering if Shanahan, if he would have almost got run over, or Fatuzzi, if the circumstances might have been handled differently, or McMahon, right?
Look, I can tell you right now, this is where local politics meets, right? Because if I was DA, I would do like my man from the Bronx said a long time ago, and he's my favorite actor. I'm putting cases on all of you. Pelican Bay, you, and you. They're all getting cases. You know what I mean? How can you not formulate and move forward with a case?
Oh my God.
In this time and era where we're talking about social injustice, and you have a ground ball is right there.
And don't get me wrong. As an attorney over the years, man, I've been, I've tried to be as creative as possible when I've been confronted with video. Okay, you look at the video, you run it about a good 5, 6, 7 times and try to find the holes, and you try to say, okay, well, this is gonna be my argument. It doesn't look the way it seems. Man, this right here, this is beyond creative.
And this is
It's
what we
not
call
only
stubborn evidence. Stubborn evidence. It's not going to change. It's never going to change. It's going to stay the same. And so you stuck with it.
well, the thing about stubborn evidence, the thing about this alternate reality is until we change the people, and we talked about this in season 1 of Speaking Legally,
Right.
it matters who's in power. So if
Local
you don't elect
politics.
the people to represent the interests of the community, we're going to continue to see stubborn evidence still not bring us justice. Like this, it makes no sense that this is a crime. Like you hit a police officer with a car. Like, how in the world do we turn? But then again, we've seen a lot happen in our country. We're only a week in to a new administration, and there's been numerous challenges. But it once again speaks to the fact that while there's work to be done, this should be a lesson to everybody, especially those who are watching in New York City. We have multiple elections that are going on. There's a special election happening in Queens right now. In District 24, there's city council elections that'll be happening across the city. There's a new mayor that will be elected in New York. And I'm sure in other places across the country, there are the elections that are happening in between all of the attention that we've put on the presidential election. So local politics, it matters. And it matters if you are registered to vote. It matters if you vote, and it matters who you vote for. Because this kind of situation, this right in front of our face with stubborn evidence, is still happening.
And the reason why I said,
I just want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to Maurice Coley, who did his time as a state trooper, and now he decided to retire. And he said the job is not the same anymore. I can see why, because if that was Trooper Coley on that hood, you know what I'm saying?
Listen, that's why I say that we need to pay attention to this. Folks need to pay attention. Don't feel guilty about voting based on your interests, your list of what's important to you and your community. Don't let anybody try to dissuade you and tell you, oh, well, what about my interests and me? You got to look out and say, wait a minute, is this the DA for me? For my borough, for my community? What are they doing for me? What have you done for me lately? Okay, apply that when it comes to you entering that booth and marking that ballot and putting it in that machine, because this is an example of that. Them folks in Staten Island, they said, listen, we're going to make sure that we vote for somebody that's not going to turn around and be prosecuting us, that's going to be turning around and deciding that when we want to stand for something, however wrong, misguided, and wrong-headed it may be, that he's not going to turn on us. We're not going to put it, we're not going to buy that dog and have it bite us later. Okay,
Yeah,
that's not what's happening.
One of the things that I also take from this, and I know we cannot be everywhere, right? Because if we are, then that means we're nowhere, is really the ability to galvanize around the injustice and unequal justice that exists. There was a rally and a protest not too long ago in reference to Martin Luther King, and I know we can't be everywhere. So just hear me out for a minute. Mm-hmm. There should be a rally and a protest in reference to this. The light should be shone. It should be shown on top of this. The light should be bright, right? What happens is that a story like this hits the paper, gets a couple of sentences, and it goes away. Now, I know we have enough things that we need to protest about that are wrong within our community and as it relates to law enforcement, but shining a light on this and having a protest and having a march saying, how dare you decide not to file charges? How is this any different than cases that concerning people of color? Give me the justification in not following through with this type of charge when law enforcement is injured, whether it's a fracture or not, versus when a civilian, a person of color, winds up dead at your hands, at your footstep. So as we talk about rallying and protesting, the diversification of what is not being done and what is being done needs to be balanced in reference to really pointing out the true picture of the injustice when it comes down to folks of color and law enforcement.
And I just want to point out that the head of the Legal Aid Society came out against this. He said, listen, we're walking our clients into those courtrooms every day over there in Richmond County, and nowhere. They're getting prosecuted left and right for the most minimal offense to whatever law enforcement official they encounter or happen to have an unfavorable encounter with. How is this? I mean, how is it that you're doing this right here? They've directly confronted the DA about this, and there has been silence when it comes to that, and it's unfortunate and unusual.
Silent night again, according to Mr.
Silent night.
Silent night,
Yes.
holy night.
But
This is Spanish version of that. You know what I mean?
worse. It gets worse because not only do we have these situations going on, and we talk about who you elect, who you put into office. Then when there are people in office, then we have the conversation that all your skin folk, right? It might not be your kinfolk. So what
No. I love the saying, all your skin folks may not be your kin folks. And before we get into this, I'm just going to give you because Ed is chopping at the bit, but we have to stay balanced and focused when it comes down to speaking legally with the culture and the legal mix, right? So before we start to denigrate, because let's just also keep in mind that we also profess as a people that we are not monolithic. We do
correct.
not have one voice. There is not one leader of the African, Pan-African, African diaspora, you name it. There's more than a Royce Russell, or Ed Pichardo, or Al Sharpton, Crump, you name it, that is out there leading the forces. And if we fall into the bracket that we all have to be the same, then we've really fallen down. And as they say on the commercial, I can't get up.
And I agree with everything that you said, but I also want to highlight that the interests of the people that you represent. Yes, we're not monolithic. There are a variety of views, and we're not here to debate what your political views are and what you believe. But there should be a common thread of representing the interests of those who live where you live in the communities that you're representing. And if you're blind to that, then
that's a tight walk, Dr. Grant, because I know a person who's on this show that live in a very affluent community. I'm not going to say his name in English or Spanish, and he has friends that are of a certain, economic ilk. And necessarily, when it comes down to tax cuts and certain things of that nature, he's fighting them off with the brow, saying, "Yo, what's up? What's up? What about the people? What about our people? And they keep on coming and saying, "Well, I need that tax break because of A, B, and C." We are very much in a chokehold, although these folks need to be choked, but they're very much in a chokehold in reference to ideology and what we stand for. Ed, I'll leave it up to you to get cranking on it.
Well, listen, when I saw this story, I thought about In Living Color. I don't know if you guys remember the show In Living Color, and they used to have this segment called The Times. And there was an episode where this guy comes up to the Times and he says, "Hey, brother." And he said, "Brother, I'm not your brother. The only brothers I see here are me and him." And what he was talking about was his biological brother, because he was like, "I don't know what you talking about. The only brother I see here is this dude next to me with the same last name." Now these two cats right here, I don't have a problem debating ideology, conservative versus liberal, moderate versus radical. We could go on all day, and I'm going to give you your respect and your dap. I might be, say, Marxist, and you might be capitalist. I might be liberal, and you're conversative. I know conservative.
I'm Jordan, you Kobe. I'm
whatever.
But
the issue here is when you start going into the territory of helping people not tell the truth and define reality. And then once you start doing that, now I got a problem with you, because all you doing now is you buck dancing now. That's what you're doing. You are here truly timing. You got these two here joining their so-called fellow Republicans, members of the Grand Old Party, GOP, saying, "Oh, yeah, the election was stolen. Those electoral votes aren't real," after every judge in the country said, no, those votes are real. No, you did not win the election. No, 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 all day long. No evidence was presented. There were several recounts all over the country. How dare these two individuals with the history of black voter suppression all of a sudden decide for political convenience to side with President Trump? One of these individuals.
This gets to the point, and I'm jumping in very, very aggressively because this gets to the point of when we look at Democrats and we talk about going across the aisle and shaking hands and making amends. And when I talked about, hey, there's just some people that just need to be ostracized and we not making amends. We know who you are. We know what you're about. We're going to get this done with or without you. And you move to the side. I kind of think that these two guys are sitting in the front of the class, right? They're right there raising their hands. And the teacher's like, yo, you raise your hand one too many times. We're not even going to pick on you. They're in the front row because I can't imagine you, Ed, being in the position in Congress, Senate, or what have you, and seeing these two guys and talking about, you know what, Ed, President Brachado, we have to, I know I said that the elections were, we're fake and we're phony, but we still need to get this bill passed that affects A, B, and C in my state. Or we still need. Yeah, look at you, right? Sighing, exactly. Right.
Well. Listen. One of the challenges here, of course, is that in the Senate, on many of the most important pieces of legislation, you not only need a majority, you need a 2/3 vote.
Yes, understood.
So that's one of the problems here. Fortunately, over at the House side, I haven't done the math lately, but we don't need as many votes. And when I say we, I mean Democrats, liberals, people what I'm calling right now, rightfully so, on the right side, don't need to do as much kowtowing or appeasement of the other side to get certain things done. I mean, talking about school, these two need to be hit with a ruler. Each of them need to stick their hands out and like used to happen back in the day. Put your hand out so I can hit you with that ruler in your hand. Yeah, I used to go to school back in the day when the teacher used to actually hit you, and kids were better behaved. I'm sorry.
But we can't do that now.
Oh, no, you can't do that now. But I saw with my own eyes, and I tell my kids that too. I say, you lucky. You real lucky. Because back in my day, my man used to wrap up 3 rulers, used to wrap it up with tape and be like, stick your hand out and whack, whack, whack. And you start seeing the kid crying and little tears coming out and walking back to his desk. And that's what needs to happen to these two right here.
That's what you get from that even Christopher Columbus discovered America. So
yeah. One of them is named Byron Donald. He's a congressman out of Florida. And then the other one is Burgess Owens. He's a former out of Utah. He's a former NFL player.
Yes.
Maybe he needs more blood to the brain, or maybe he got hit too many times. Maybe that's what happened to him. He's actually a QAnon believer. Once again, maybe we need to examine him for head injuries. Something wrong with him. Something wrong with that boy. That's remember,
Tell us how you really feel, Ed.
He was voted in, so somebody believes in him. And, hey, who knows? Maybe he's the spook that sat behind the door. Maybe he needs a re-education. Maybe he's a miseducation. Maybe there's something there. But remember, this is the person that you have to work with to get what you want.
Yeah, work.
And tell us how you really feel.
No. Listen, when it comes to the politics, when I first got involved in politics, and I don't mean elected office and none of that, but once I started being involved in campaigns, somebody told me there's no permanent enemies and no permanent friends. It's a very quite seedy world. You have to be friends and shake hands with people that you necessarily don't like. So I'm going to put that to the side, but I think it's necessary to blast these two, given what's going on. Given the way these people have taken on these false ideologies and started acting upon them and actually engaging in violence and in threatening behavior.
Well, and it is something that would make you shake your head. As they say in in the text world, social media world, SMH, because just looking at the history of us in America, right? What ground are you standing on? Right? And these folks are very careful. You have to understand, you listen to their rhetoric, they're very careful, and they just try to focus on this election in and of itself. And whenever they approach with the history of Black folks exerting themselves in voting and what it took to be at the forefront of the line to have voting rights, they shrink. They don't recite history. They go on and they throw in red herrings and they speak about something else because they know how preposterous it is to tie the history of our struggles in voting to this very, very asinine idea that a vote and a race was stolen.
Yeah, I mean, there's two, in my view, there's always been two kinds of conservatives. You have the genuine conservatives, people who truly believe what it is that they propound, and you got others who are simply taking advantage of the moment. And when I talk about those taking advantage of the moment, it's no secret that there's a scarcity of Black people, people of color in the Republican Party right now. And so the minute that you decide as a person of color that you're going to be a Republican, a conservative, the amount of money and support and friendships that you get are going to be plenty. Why? Because, they have a vested interest in trying to paint a false picture of a desire for diversity.
Well, let's finish your thought. I have something.
No. And so, I think what these doing, they know that this is a lie. They just selfishly pursuing this for their own self-benefit and self-enrichment. I'll leave it there.
So the article is asking for them to resign, right? Saying that they need to resign because they didn't represent the will of those in the communities that they serve, going along with this lie. But the challenge that we're faced with right now is because there's a fracture in the Republican Party. There are people in the party saying, like, this is not our party. This is not what we stand for. These are not the way we make sure that the conservative ideology that we believe in continues to move forward. So the party itself is imploding because they're the people who want to follow what Trump does and the people who want to follow what the traditional route of this party was. So there are multiple layers of incredible, what I call cray-cray, happening all at the same time. And because of the point that you made, the scarcity in seeing Black faces representing leadership in the party, of course, this is going to catch everyone's attention. And I think it's really challenging if these are two great leaders that are now marred because of the decision that they made to go with a lie. Because we're utilizing lies in this country.
I hear what you're saying. The one sentence and the one phrase that I have a problem with is great leaders and going along with this lie. They cannot be in the same sentence, because if you're a great leader, you cannot go along with this lie. And so if they're professing that the election was stolen, then they can't be great. I don't even see how you're great. I don't see in what aspect you can even
benefit of the doubt.
I know, I hear you. I can't even understand in what world you're great because you're misled. That's one. Two, if those that are Republican really want to go back to the good old days, then that means us as Black folks, we really should be dancing in the street because the Republicans were about us way back in the day, way back in the day.
And this article points that out.
That's right. And now the third part is, quite frankly, all the hucking and bucking that Republicans have done over years past, trying to keep this a two-party place, has now risen within their own party, which almost brings them to a breaking point where now it may be a 3, 4, 5-party system here of folks voicing their opinion, and the first person wins. The best person wins, because clearly the Republican Party will not be able to mend it. They cannot. All they doing is suppressing it. It's not mended, it's suppressed. So when folks come out and they have their new face on, what I call their makeup on, right? Because without makeup, they look one way. With makeup, they look another way. right? When they come out with their makeup on and they hold their hands and everything is together, I'm saying, nah, where's that dude that I saw taking out the garbage without makeup? Where's that dude? Because I know what that dude looked like.
Well, I think this speaks to that movement, that Lincoln Project movement that was occurring during the election,
That's right.
and there was several old school veteran Black Republicans who were part of that because they were appalled by the Trump politics and the influence that it was having on the party. Because these guys, when you sit down and you talk to them, you may have issues with their conservative principles, but once you start talking about race, they're like, hey, listen, we don't tolerate any racism here. And yeah, we got members of the party who believe in that, but not me, and so forth. And and they've like traditionally over the years, have kept the check on that, becoming too prominent in the party, and many of them are extremely concerned because, listen, there are places, in fact, from what I understand, in Southern Illinois, the state of Lincoln, where Black people are still voting Republican because the Republicans in those parts of that country represent something different than the national party. You also had here in New York State for quite a time during the 1970s what they called the Rockefeller Republicans. And, a representation of those guys that you might be familiar with is Dick Parsons, Richard Parsons, head of AOL, owner of, a bar here in Harlem, capitalist brother, but, still a brother, by any other, description of the word. And, people are really getting their politics twisted. They're not really, thinking about what they're saying or what they mean or what they're looking at. And this is an example of it right here.
And meanwhile, while these folks need to be ostracized, we got those who are carrying the flag across the touchdown and across America, and they're being threatened, right, Dr.
To their own peril.
That's right.
And that's the danger of the lie, because then the lie starts putting people at risk. So we already heard about AOC being threatened. Now we're hearing about Representative Hakeem Jeffries, his family being threatened.
And let me just tell you one thing. Whoever put the threats out there, we know that that's a chump and a punk move, because they're not directly threatening my brother Hakeem Jeffries for two reasons. One, they know they're going to get smacked, right? You're going to get jacked. The physical is going to meet the physical. Hostile is going to meet hostile, right? Number two, and I'll just put this out here, and I don't really put this out here that much, is that the brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi, we coming. So you just need to stop that. He's a member of my frat, and nobody's going to threaten him like that, because we's are coming, as they say. Put quotes around that. We's are coming. So you go ahead, do what you're going to do. Pick on the little man, pick on the odds, but if you come stepping, we come and repping.
Yeah, this guy, this Lenke individual, Robert Lenke, instead of coming directly to the congressman, who's a close friend of mine, decides to threaten his brother Hassan and call up the sister-in-law or the brother's wife. How weak is that? That is the definition of weak.
The next best thing to that is when people pump Kool-Aid through a text message, right? Like, yo, I'm like, what you doing, bro? This is a text message. You coming to get the smoke through a text? Is that what we doing?
Yeah, man. Like, come on. That's like telling my girl, yo, you better tell him that next time I see him. Like, nah, bro. Tell it to me when you see me. You know what I mean? Don't go around to the representatives and the subordinates. Come directly to the boss.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Come see me. You know what I mean? Really, I'm glad that this individual has been arrested. He's a former U.S. Air Force captain. Amazing.
Wow.
You got. And I respect members of the military, the veterans, for, maintaining our freedom. When I see them, I say, thank you for the service. I don't agree with everything that they do overseas, or rather most of it. I'm a staunch critic of U.S. foreign policy and its many facets and angles throughout the planet, but I still thank our veterans for imperiling themselves on my behalf, or so they believe they are in many cases. And so I respect them. But, this idea that individuals who have joined the armed forces are now turning on their own people, starting to threaten our elected officials.
Or exempt from punishment, because I'm sure in his brain, he feels like, hey, I'm exempt. I'm a veteran. And a lot of this goes into, we could start all the way back with Colin Kaepernick, and the powers that lay here and there, and how the veterans were seen in a certain light and untouchable. And no, you're touchable. And because you're a veteran, and in all due respect, I praise you. I thank you. That doesn't give you carte blanche to do what you want to do.
And to be honest, Colin's protests were directed directly at police brutality. It was the critics that then spun it into this, oh, well, you're offending our veterans by offending the flag and not standing up in all of this. And now, now we got, what happened with George Floyd and him finally being vindicated for the stance that he took. This individual apparently is also supposed to be former law enforcement, a retired sheriff. But when they went to check with the Alameda County Sheriff's Department,
guess what they found out?
They're like, nah, he wasn't. He's not down with us. He was never one of us. So the question is, well, who is this individual? You know what I mean? Who is this person? And what's really going on here? I mean, at the end of the day, this whole, I was listening to an NPR broadcast where they were discussing specifically the issue of former members of the armed forces representing an inordinate number of the individuals who rioted and invaded the Capitol recently. And it's disturbing, because these folks, for all intents and purposes, let's not kid ourselves. These are trained killers. These people were trained to apply lethal force to our foreign enemies. And for them to now be engaged in these fringe groups, these right-wing groups, these white supremacist groups is disturbing, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed directly. And when I say addressed,
it needs to be denounced. It needs to be denounced by those that allege to be within the confines frame of not just social justice, right? Because there's always people of color, the minorities striking us down. There are folks that call themselves liberals, friends, alliances. They need to be out in the forefront condemning this. They need to be out in the forefront calling this person out. They need to be out in the forefront of calling Burgess and the other clown boy that was this in Congress. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. They need to be out in the forefront and calling injustice and asking for the appropriate punishment.
Well, I must say that from what I've been seeing, in recent days, a lot of these people are getting outed by people who know them, that have identified them in several videos. So people are standing up. Even relatives are outing relatives. Like, yeah, that's my sister, that's my brother, that's my cousin, or that's my, well, sometimes it's like the ex-girlfriend or the ex-boyfriend, the ex-husband. Yeah, I see you in there. That's why I left you, punk.
That's right. Child support might be late. Late. So I'm calling you out. You know what I mean?
But the evidence is stubborn. They caught you on camera. They caught you on video.
But what they also caught on video, the same thing that they cried down Colin Kaepernick about with the American flag, they were using the American flag to beat officers.
What?
Right.
So really, like, what are we really saying out here? And it's like, there's another story in the news. We didn't get to it the other week, but it's also calling for somebody to be removed from office because of what he did with the grand jury. Like, the list goes on. We have so many actors that are not.
This guy, right? We, this is what happens. We say this dude, this guy. You got to understand. for the listeners out there, we come from a background where, you have many kids and sometimes we don't remember your name. So like, I don't remember his name. You come here, this dude over here. What's his name? Cameron? That dude over here, right? The dude that either told too many lies that he can't catch up with, or he's severely misunderstood. And when it comes down to words coming out of his mouth, people severely misremember what he says, right? Because what side of the ledger is he on?
Oh man, him.
What side of the ledger is he on? And for those that don't remember, he's the attorney general that has to deal with the Breonna Taylor case, right? And his lack of leadership in order to secure an indictment, and what he presented to the grand jurors. Folks are like, nah, you're not going to blame this on our doorstep. We're going to tell you we're going to tell the world what you did, and we want the world to know what you did. So this way they can't come to us. And if we're going to feel the heat, you're going to feel the heat.
He reminds me of the guy who was dancing in the dark too close to the woman he wasn't supposed to be with. And when they turned on the lights, he got caught.
Ooh.
He got caught.
You've seen that
hit
movie
upside
before.
the head. Yeah, we've seen it. Before. That's him. He was trying to dance in the dark, presenting less evidence to the grand jury than he was supposed to, not putting in the proper charges, and got caught out there trying to rely on the secrecy of the grand jury proceedings. Shame on you. Trying to appease McConnell, Senator McConnell. Like, yeah.
I give you one better, Ed. He remind me of the guy that's trying to pickpocket you on the train, and somebody go, I see that, and he like, oh, what you talking about? No, we good. He got all of a sudden,
get out my pocket.
He got words for you. Now all of a sudden he can speak. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden he can say. I mean, I checked him a long time ago. But once again, this goes to the politics and people in the right places, and not only the right faces, but the right philosophies as to what we need in our community. And once again, people can make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. It is the arrogance. It is the ability not to be humble, the inability to apologize, the inability to reassess and recalibrate and come back to the table and say, yes, you know what? This was a mistake, or I could have done better. But to be strong and wrong never really serves anybody any good in any shape or form,
is rolling with it, and it came out who he's married to or just got engaged to.
Who did he just get engaged to? I didn't hear that. Who's that?
What? I believe it's Mitch McConnell's niece or goddaughter, some relationship.
You got to be kidding me.
Some relationship. Yeah, that was splattered all over the place. Pictures of he and the fiance. So we're not a gossip show. I'm saying do your research. You'll see the photos come up everywhere of who he is allegedly attached to. So where the legal meets the cultural, we're going to uncover all of these things that are happening and just really shine the light on what's going on. We're crying for justice. We're crying for reform and equality. And then we keep reviewing case after case after case. And we don't want people to start, well, some people already stopped, but we don't want folks to stop losing hope in this process that we have, how our government is supposed to operate, how the Constitution is supposed to protect the people. And right now we have a country that truly is seemingly divided. And I don't know if it's everybody, but I think there were a lot of selfish interests that let the 4 years of the last administration go by, and they didn't think it would get as bad as it got. They thought it was controllable. They thought it was, okay for greater cause, getting people nominated to Supreme Court, getting judges in local courts. So there were other motives and agendas. And I think it bubbled up to the top on January 6th. And now the top is off. There is no putting this back in the bottle.
And what I want, and I'm sorry, I just want to make a point. I want folks to really have a clear lens on all of these incidents, especially the 4 years and what's going on now. When it comes to the veterans, right? Let's think about, what do these veterans get after they come from our foreign wars? What happens in many cases is these individuals become disaffected because they aren't provided with jobs. They face, an economy that's not friendly to them. And then that's when that class thing starts coming in. And what happens is that the rich folk up top decide that instead of addressing those people's problems, they start telling them, well, no, listen, you need to blame these people and that people. They're the ones who are taking your job. They're the ones who are causing you to have the problems that you have. They need to, these individuals need to realize that the reason why you're coming home and you don't have a job is because the corporate titans decided to ship your job overseas. The reason why, you are having problems with your healthcare and all that is because of the way the healthcare system is set up to benefit certain people and certain companies. They need to start, I think about years ago, the transit workers had a strike here in New York City, right? And they engaged in a peaceful strike. They didn't damage property. They just simply said, you know what? We're going to stop working because we're protesting the labor contract that you're offering us. And you know what happened? Mayor Bloomberg at the time, Mr. Billionaire, Quadrillionaire, called them thugs. He called them thugs in the newspaper. All three newspapers ran it: the Daily News, the New York Post, and I forgot what other third daily was active at that time. And people were kind of just like, oh, but he called them thugs. Now think about what happened at the Capitol. Those were thugs. Those were people. And those people don't even have the gall to take responsibility for what they did. They're actually saying that, no, they were Antifa activists amongst their midst that actually committed those acts. Can you believe that? I can believe you're not even willing to stand up to what you did you got caught on camera doing. These are the cowards that we're dealing with here.
But we can believe that because we see that same storyline reverse when it comes down to a protest that have to deal with folks of color. I'm not going to say black lives because black lives, black, white, let's use the terms. We're big people. We can understand when it comes down to black people, people of the African diaspora, Latino people marching in the street. No one accepts the fact that there are infiltrators there causing havoc and causing riot. It is look at those people and how they do. So it is not, foregone on me that they would now flip the script and use it to their benefit. But what I will say in a couple of minutes that we have left is that in New York City, we have several several races that are happening in reference to the mayor, the DA. And if we're going to be the starting point and the end point of some of this conversation of how to do it right, then we need to be sincere in our actions. And that means everybody needs to do their due diligence and drill down on every candidate that's running for office of the mayor, right? Drill down on them. Everybody needs to do their due diligence and drill down on every candidate that's running for office of the district attorney. Everybody needs to do their due diligence and drill down on everybody that's running for comptroller. See, comptroller. We don't really talk about that race. The person that controls the pennies in New York, the person that controls who gets paid and who doesn't get paid as far as lawsuits in New York, the person that controls how New York finances are invested and what do we do. Very important.
What, $80 billion pension system we're carrying in New York City? And one of the largest on the planet?
That's right. And there
mostly funded by workers of color?
That's right. And there's a person of color who's standing in the forefront who says that they're going to run for comptroller. That doesn't mean that person gets a pass. That means that person we have to do our due diligence with that person as well.
And listen, for the mayor's seat, people been looking closely at the brother Ray McGuire and saying, wait a minute, you used to work with the Koch brothers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Koch brothers. They are, well, one of them died, but collectively as brothers, they're one of the wealthiest families in the country that support conservative causes. So, I'm not saying that you should make a decision based on that, but you have to look at the gentleman closely if you're just simply looking at whether or not he's African American or not. Andrew Yang, I just read an article that some people are looking closely at him because they say he uses the money from the campaigns to pay himself a salary. I mean, those are things to look at, and whether or not he's, what was he doing? Was he in New York City during the COVID, or did he run away and go somewhere and take a vacation?
And to your point,
does that matter? I don't know, but
look, to me, all of it matters. And what matters most is, what are you doing when you're not running? Like, what is your life? Because all of a sudden now you have it for the interest of the people of New York, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really? What were you doing? Who are you involved with? What have you done? And I don't mean just sit on a board, right? Because we all know people get invited to sit on the boards, and some boards are paid boards. What have you done? What groundwork have you done? Give me your whole portfolio. And I think that's what we have at our footsteps, and hopefully through the engagement of, speaking legally, and the engagement of the shenanigans that we see here happening before us and talking about it, will reach someone's conscience and elevate them to do all the due diligence so they can put their best foot forward when they pull the lever.
And listen, where the legal meets the cultural, we tend to look at these things from a legal lens as well as a cultural lens. So that's what we're talking about here. Make no mistake about it. Do your research. Break down what it is that you're looking at. Who does this individual belong to? What organizations has he been with? What legal structures has he been part of? What have been his or her positions on certain items and certain issues? Break it down for yourself. Don't just listen to us. Break it down for yourself. And right now in 2021, you have an abundance of information at your fingertips. Not those like false sites or information that's not true, but is on the internet. Because let's keep in mind, not everything that's on the internet is true. I mean, you have to look for credible resources, for Christ's sake. You can't just believe whatever some nut job tells you, because it appears on a screen, on a machine. I mean, come on, give me a break. And the reason why I'm talking like that is because I'm getting tired of the sympathy and that some of these people are getting, like, oh, they were misled. They got caught up. Like, damn, how much catching up is there? I mean, if you're 45, 50, some of these people are old. Like, man, you need to be slapped upside the head, man. What made you think that was true? Are you stupid or something? Did you get hit with a dumb stick or something? What kind of candy are you eating? What kind of nutrition are you getting? Are you getting enough air? I mean, really? Come on. You really think that the election got stolen?
Ed has just stolen all the analogies and phraseology for the year of 2021 going to 2022. He is now banned. I'm putting the Trump ban, just like people can't come to the United States. He is now banned from using any other analogies for the whole 2021 series. He's done. Done, data, finito, kibosh. All of it. That's it, son. You can't use no more. That's it.
Oh my goodness. But that's just how we feel. We're like, really, how's this happening? I feel you, my brother. I understand. And this is like, what? I mean, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, a baby can see some of this stuff. But here's what the lesson, well, one of the lessons that I hope we learn: who controls the narrative and how's that narrative getting out? Because everybody let it fly what was being tweeted for 4 years, right? And nobody thought it was enough to censor or to stop until it got too late. And that's when everything is shut down. But the damage has been done. People started subscribing and believing the lie. So there's work to do. There's more for us to cover on Speaking Legally. We thank you so much for being here for another series, part of our series. And please, if there is something that you don't understand that's happening in the news, or maybe breaking news that we might not know about, feel free to send us a message so that we can have our legal experts dissect it and really be the cross section between where the legal meets the cultural. So thank you so much for tuning in. Any final words to my co-hosts?
Well, let me just say that, there will come a time when COVID will be over and you need to be prepared. And there'll come a time where you may be facing new restrictions and requirements as far as your employment is concerned. Have you been tested? Do you have the vaccine? Can there be a mandatory requirement that you get the vaccine in order to go to work? What happens to rent issues? So what I can tell you is that you need to slide in the first base, and slide in the first base is us. So we could break down what it all means when we start the new over. What does it mean for you culturally? What it means for you legally? And we're here to see you on the other side.
So only thing I gotta say is prepárate. Get prepared, okay? Be mindful of what's coming next. Hasta luego.